All right, today we're going to take a look at a pretty intense forecast for what our world might look like in 20 years. We're going to break down some really powerful forces, everything from AI to global politics, that are predicted to push us toward a much harsher and more controlled future. So let's just dive right in.
It's the big question, right? Where are we all heading over the next couple of decades? It seems like a simple question, but according to the material we're looking at today, the answer is, well, it's incredibly complicated and, frankly, pretty challenging.
And there you have it. That's the core prediction, laid out pretty bluntly. The trend we're on, according to this forecast, isn't towards more freedom or equality, it's the exact opposite. It's a really stark outlook, so let's dig into why the source is making such a dramatic claim.
Okay, so if that's the destination, what's the engine getting us there? According to this forecast, it really boils down to two incredibly powerful forces that are pushing the world in this direction.
The first engine, no surprise here, is artificial intelligence. Now, the hope is that AI becomes this amazing tool that empowers everyone. But the prediction here is the opposite, that it's going to become a tool for concentrating power. It will mostly serve the powerful, big governments and huge corporations, not the average person.
And you can see that split pretty clearly here. It lays out the winners and the losers in this new world. On one side, the powerful get a tighter grip on data, on technology, and on the insane amounts of energy that AI needs. And on the other side, well, the ordinary person gets job losses and a life that's more and more monitored and controlled.
The second engine of change is the raw, unfiltered nature of global politics. And this quote from the source just says it all, doesn't it? The idea is that when it comes to how countries deal with each other, it's not about what's right or wrong, it's about the cold, hard pursuit of their own interests. So if you accept that idea, that there are no morals, only interests, then the goal for anyone in power becomes incredibly simple. It's just about staying on top. It's about maintaining and growing your dominance, using any tool you can, especially AI, no matter the cost.
So you take these two forces, incredibly powerful AI in the hands of a few, and a global game with no real moral rules, and you smash them together. What kind of world do you get? Well, the forecast says you get one that is deeply, fundamentally divided.
And you can see the symptoms of that division right here. As countries stop working together, they start looking inward. So borders, they get harder to cross, nationalism gets a huge boost, and, at the fringes of that, extremism starts to grow.
And underneath all that, you've got these huge economic pressures pulling the world in totally different directions. On the one hand, you have aging societies in places like Europe and Japan that are getting economically weaker. And on the other, you've got places like India and Pakistan with massive growing populations that are facing incredible pressure from poverty, which in turn drives more migration.
And all of this leads to a massive technological divide. You get this widening chasm between the wealthy countries that own and control AI and other key technologies, and the poorer societies that just get left further and further behind. It's a whole new kind of global inequality.
Now, a divided and unequal world is an unstable world, and the source here points to these major conflicts not as temporary problems, but as permanent fixtures of the next 20 years. The war in Ukraine is seen as a long, grinding war. Tensions between the US and China are going to define everything, and the Middle East and the India-Pakistan border are seen as permanent flashpoints, always at risk of blowing up.
We've talked about the big picture, geopolitics, technology, but what does all of this actually mean for us, for the individual? Let's drill down and look at the human cost that this forecast lays out. So the first and most direct hit is on our jobs. And the source doesn't pull any punches here. We're talking about millions. Millions of jobs are predicted to just disappear as AI gets better and better at doing them.
When you boil it all down, the cost for the individual really comes down to losing two fundamental things. First, economic security. Just the ability to have a stable job. And second, personal freedom, in a world where you're constantly being surveilled and controlled.
Okay, so let's pull all these pieces together. We've seen the drivers, the divided world they create, and the cost to each of us. So what does the final 20-year outlook really look like?
This timeline kind of lays out the whole progression. Today is the baseline. These things are already happening. In 10 years, the prediction is we're living in a world that is way more unequal and way more monitored. And then you get to that 20-year mark, and that world has become even less free and much more likely to erupt in regional wars.
And this is really the bottom line of the entire forecast. The future it describes as one where a tiny elite owns and controls the tech that runs our lives,
while the vast majority of us are simply monitored, managed, and controlled by it.
So after breaking all of that down, from the global chess match right down to our personal lives, we're left with this one final massive question. The source material lays this out as the path we are on, so the question for all of us is that future set in stone? Is it unchangeable?